What's up, everyone? Recently, I was asked to visualize sales data by quarter, and I created something like this. And the reason I decided to do my own custom sort of styling is I tried the out of the box designs that came with Excel, and they were not very professional looking. They didn't seem to go very well in my presentation. So I thought I'd create something on my own. And in the process of doing that, I realized that there are actually a lot of little elements that you need to get right to create something like this. So let's see how we do it. And in this tab, I have the raw data here. So the first thing that I realized is you need to select the data from here. So just leave the header, which is sales, and then you select the numbers, create the chart, and you can just create the first chart that shows up. And out of the box, Excel gives you something like this. And then my hope was that I can select one of the chart designs from here and it will just give me what I need, but it didn't do that, unfortunately. So first is you need to get the color scheme right. So for this, let's select the background. So I want to give it a nicer background, something like this, and it just looks nicer. Then for each of the bar graphs, I need to give it a color, which is of a particular gradient. So in my case, I have selected a certain gradient, and I've already pre-selected that here in my recent colors, so that we don't have to spend a lot of time selecting this. Now, if you have a corporate template, you can pretty much get the color scheme from there. And if you don't, then you can go to coolers.co, and I'll leave a link to that website below, and just use the color scheme from there. So you can see that I selected this, and now the colors look a little bit better than what they were before. So the other thing that I would like to do is not have so much of a gap between these series. So what this does is out of the box, it gives something like a minus 27. I don't know why this is, but you can just make it 0, and then this removes the gap. And in my opinion, it just looks a little bit better when it is all grouped together, especially for this data. We don't need to we don't need to have a gap in between. And then the gap width as well, you can reduce that. And what it will do is it will reduce the gap between the bars. And when it does that, the bar itself becomes bigger. So you can notice that the bar itself is becoming bigger. The bars themselves are becoming bigger. And as a result, they look just a little more substantial. Now, the other thing that you should do is, now these are all numbers that are very close. In my data set, this is how it was. And all of this is starting from 0, which I don't need it to start from 0, so that the difference becomes a little more noticeable. So I clicked on the axis, and you go on the axis options, and then here it asks you where do you want to start at. So for this, I found that if I start at 75,000, then that's actually quite good for me. Now you see here, now it's making the difference look a little more uh, clear to the eye where you are changing, and you can play around with this. Maybe I could make this 85, and it'll still look nicer. Yeah, I think that looks good. And then the other thing that I want to do is also add a data label. So you can see that right now this doesn't have a data label. It's very hard to see from here what these numbers are. So let's just add a data label, and you can add data labels individually to each of these things. And immediately you notice that there are numbers like 100,000, 110,000, and in the other chart that I saw for from one of my coworkers, I saw that they had 105K instead of 110,000. So I thought that was interesting, and that is another element that you need to get right. And let me just remove this uh, because we don't need this. So here, what you can do is you can use one of the custom formatting that Excel gives you on the numbers, and use that to make this 100,000 appear as 100K. So you go to format cells. So you saw that I went to format cells, and then you go to custom formatting, and there is an option there that helps you change the 000 after the commas into C. So you go here, custom, and you select just this one, and after this you put a K. So what this will do is it will change the custom formatting to 110K, 112K, and so forth. So this I think is already quite nicer, right? And for the title itself, let's just call it sales by quarters, or sales by region by quarter. And then bring the region up. I think this also makes a little bit of a difference in terms of visually your eye goes there first, and so that's a little bit easier to follow along with the color. So now you can see where these things are, and I want to make this also a little bit bigger. Now, a couple of other things that you can do, which I thought looked nice. One is on the graph itself, you can actually give it some sort of border and background rather, which makes it look nice. So I think it's here, shadow. Yeah, what I wanted to do was give it a shadow, and I thought this is one of the things that appears sort of a depth to the image, and once you give the shadow to all of these, it just looks a little bit more polished is the word that I would use to describe this. So you do this, and pretty much all of these you can give the same sort of shadow, and then the last one. And I think on the third one it's not so apparent because it's maybe covered by the things on the two sides. So I noticed that when you do this, it also reflects sort of the legend, which is nice. And then finally, for the background, if you wanted to do this, then you could make the background gradient, which I thought was actually a nice touch to the image. And you can choose one of the preset gradients. This one is nice, or let's just keep here. This one is nice, and it kind of changed the color, which we didn't want. So we can just change it back to our original color. And I'm just going to select the color here, which I believe this was the original color. So yeah, so this is what it looks like. Maybe you can make this a little bit bigger, and it is more readable that way. But yeah, these are all the elements that you need to use to come up with a sort of polished, presentable bar graph. Unfortunately, the Excel options do not work very well for this. And what I found was it is also beneficial to play around with some of these options yourselves so that you know what's going on. Now, just as I'm talking, I realize that hey, I can also get rid of grid lines, which makes it even cleaner. And I like this effect as well. And then we can make this bigger. So, very simple stuff, but ultimately, once you put all of these things together, the combined effect of that is much more impressive than if you were to just use out of the box options. So this is what I discovered and I wanted to share today. If you have any questions about this, or if you have your own trips and tips and techniques, please share that in the comments and I'll respond to them. Thank you very much, guys.